And so when we talk about how it's intertwined, do people realize that police officers in the United States are trained by the Israeli military? A lot of people don't know that. Back in 2019, when I was in Palestine, I saw with my own eyes an Israeli soldier with having a Palestinian on the ground with his knee on that man's neck in 2019. 2020 in COVID, I saw that exact same video, that same image, that same scene play out with George Floyd. There's no distinction. That violence over there is the same as that violence here. They're trained over there. They're trained by an army that is occupying a people and then using those methods here, upon people here, specifically Black Americans. And so you really can't separate it. You really can't. To affect you. One of the tragedies of a human being is that oftentimes we do not consider the consequences of our words and our actions 10 steps down the line, 20 steps down the line. We don't consider the consequences unless they are directly in front of our face, and even then people are sometimes unable to do that. But there is a ripple effect that takes place. And when people ask us, aren't you afraid of what a Trump presidency will bring? Yeah, of course I'm worried. Of course I'm afraid. You'd have to be stupid not to be afraid. But why is no one considering the ramifications, the disastrous ramifications of what would happen if a party, and particularly a politician, who is number 2 to Biden, who, as John Kirby said, has been a full partner in the administration's policy with regard to Gaza, meaning they've been a full partner in this genocide. Is anyone not considering the ramifications of what happens if they are allowed to carry out this genocide, funding it, backing it, supporting it, being mouthpieces for it, and still win an election because the other side is supposedly worse? Is no one afraid of those ramifications? Do you understand what happens if they are allowed to just slice people to pieces over there and still win? They're allowed to support the live streaming of a genocide over there and still win. Has no one thought about those ramifications? Have we even begun to consider how disastrous they would be? I genuinely believe if people took the time to understand those ramifications, we would be having a completely different conversation right now. So in a material level, we are not separated by what's happening over there. And I'm not saying this as a Palestinian. I'm not saying this as someone who has family in Palestine. I'm not saying this as someone who, in the early weeks after October 7th, found out 15 members of his family were killed in a single missile strike. I'm not saying this as any of that. I'm saying this as a human being who's saying, this cannot be normalized. And if it is normalized, if genocide and ethnic cleansing is normalized, if we rally behind a politician who was just now endorsed by Dick Cheney, the architect of one of the most horrific foreign policy disasters and destabilizations of that entire region in modern history, if all of that is normalized, then what's going to come afterwards is much darker, much more horrific, much more destructive than anyone can possibly fathom.